Joe, a lot of things are being discussed with the ACC this week. One being is North Carolina, the new school that wants to leave the conference. Now, Jim Phillips came out with some comments yesterday saying that we're still in a really good spot. I don't know how that is if everybody wants to leave. But what are your thoughts about now with all this realignment that now North Carolina is wanting to leave the ACC?
So we talked about this not that long ago. This was about a month and a half. No, 2 months ago, maybe, that we talked about the capability of this. And it was mostly scuttlebutt of North Carolina expressing interest in leaving the conference. And then more importantly, them being the more highly pursued athletic department to bring in rather than Florida State and Clemson. And it makes sense. They're extremely successful in all the other sports outside of football, and they're competent enough at football that they'd be able to show up and compete and maybe put together 7-8 win seasons if they did join the Big Ten or the SEC. But as ACC meetings are getting heated, Blake, right now, there is a lot of commotion and drama that is going to ensue throughout the rest of this week. And Dave Boliak, who's one of the trustees, there was a quote that he told WRAL. This is in Ross Dellinger's article on Yahoo Sports. I'm advocating for that in talking about leaving. That's what we need to do. We need to do everything we can do to get there, or the alternative is the ACC is going to have to reconstruct itself. I think all options are on the table. Reconstruction is referring to an incentive-based model in which the top teams make more money than the lower teams. Look, this is a whole messy ass situation. And one thing that we talked about 2 months ago is that it wasn't necessarily the premier teams that led to the death of the Pac-12. One of the biggest catalysts for movement was because Colorado jumped to the Big 12. That was what started everything falling apart. So we need to pay close attention here. North Carolina, to me, is the bigger red flag than Florida State and Clemson because they really, really control the cards, and certain entities are going to do whatever it takes to get them involved.
You know what also it symbolizes to me? You know what the first thing I thought about when I read that article? Are they about to lose their court case? Can I tell you why? Why would you bring up change? Like when I heard the statements basically that are coming from North Carolina, why would you bring up that? Okay, well, look, we want to leave, but we'll stay if you restructure how you're divvying up revenue. The only reason, in my opinion, now I could be wrong in this, but why would you say that if you know that Florida State and Clemson are about to win this court case and that you can get out and then go make more money? I don't think that they're going to win, and I think that they'll have to pay to leave. I do think the ACC needs to restructure itself, and I think it's the best for all parties involved. And Joe, this goes to the point that we said in the very first comment or time that we talked about this, and I came out and said, Florida State cannot win this. They're going to have to buy their way out, right? And that was what we had discussed. But Joe, I'm not going to really give a take, but I would ask you to just ping this off of you, pause. Why would you make that? Why would you make that statement if you're UNC that, hey, we'll stay if you redo revenue? Does it feel like that they're kind of, I'm not going to say conceding, but do you get where I'm coming from? Why would you even make that statement that you're like, hey, we'll stay, just give us more money? Well, if you knew that there was an avenue out of this conference.
I think it all comes down to, more than ever, modern college football is now hyper-focused on revenue to the point where fans and we're sitting here talking about revenue. That used to not be something that was really discussed. Talking heads wouldn't spend time talking about conference realignment because of revenue disparities amongst TV contracts.
Right.
So I think that it all comes down to, as you're mentioning, uncertainty of if they'll be able to get out. I believe the price tag is $550 million, something along those lines. Ridiculous. If they did try to move. So I think they're trying to use the threat of trying to leave at all costs, as it's been phrased, as a way to motivate the ACC to make some shift and changes, and the other programs in the ACC to agree to accept less money if they're not performing well on the field, which They should do that, because if UNC, Miami, Florida State, and Clemson all leave, nobody's turning on ACC games. More importantly, a lot of these football programs that are inconsistent and not very good, your biggest crowds are typically when those programs show up to play. So you need to keep them at all costs. No, I mean, this is all money motivated. This is what it all comes down to, which is nauseating that we keep talking about it.
Well, I do agree with Hall of Fame Jason and the coach in here. It says, contrary to FSU's popular belief, not everything revolves around them. And I think that he's right there, because, Joe, they think that they can just do and say and look, I don't get their fan base. Like, I really don't. I think they're more cocky than they actually are. They're the guy at the bar who drives a jacked up truck because they have to overcompensate for things. But the bottom line is, I do think that the SEC does get involved with this. I told you that I'd heard through a lot of sourcing that's now coming out to play here that the SEC putting a building in Charlotte. What is that about? Oh, well, they want to be in Tobacco Row. So I do think that I think everybody needs to keep their options open. The only thing that I would say that if I don't know if I'm any of those schools that I even join a conference. You know, Joe, I remember when I was growing up, a lot of these schools weren't in conferences. Florida State didn't used to be in a conference. They used to be independent. Like, I just, for whatever it's worth, I think that everything that was said yesterday from UNC, okay, came with a massive but. But if you give us more money, we'll stay. And, okay, so you're telling me you don't really want to leave. You don't really want to leave. What you're really telling me is, hey, I don't think SMU, Stanford, whoever in the hell, should be paid more money than us. And that's fair. That's 100% fair. You know what's ironic in all this, though?
What?
I think it's funny that everybody in all these schools and universities are fighting over money, and they're getting mad that kids are asking for the same thing.
I don't think actually, to be completely honest, I think that we're at the point with how close this settlement case is. By the way, you and I are probably going to have one of our longest, most complicated shows when that settlement comes through. Like, we're going to need to be really read up when that damn thing happens, and like, it's going to be messy. But I think
why?
Because the settlement comes through, it's very likely there is going to be a revenue sharing model that is going to be presented. But this leads into what I was just about to say. I think that
going through aren't the same things, and that's been my biggest complaint with everybody. But
the whole, one of the biggest pieces to the settlement, and I think what is going to be important for it to being agreed upon, is a proposed revenue sharing model. Like that is something that needs to be included. But what I was kind of like leading in with that is, I think that these administrations and these schools are far more supportive of paying athletes than they've ever been.
Well, they don't have a choice.
Yeah. I think that there is now an aggressive effort that they want to be able to dissolve collectives and bring it all in-house so that they can control what's happening. I just think now it's gotten to the point where it's just fans that are dissatisfied and think it's inappropriate that these kids are getting money, which is stupid.
All right, stop. You brought the reason I kept asking you why. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Do you think Florida State, Clemson, UNC want to leave because they know that there's going to be a TV revenue share and that they won't be able to pay players more than the SEC?
Well, okay, so you're hitting the nail on the head. I'm not going to go as far to jump there, but this all comes from the fact that North Carolina has been one of the most successful athletic departments in the country, especially basketball, especially what they've done in all the Olympic sports. And they clearly feel that they're not getting anywhere near the amount of money. I believe that they're just barely clearing with the amount of money they're making.
So to that statement that you just said, last sentence you just said, now we're getting to the crux of what this really is all about, right?
It's pure speculation. Like, we don't have sourcing on this, but I mean, we're speculating. We haven't spoken to anyone. We're speculating.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying with that. But their actions, though, what I was trying to say was their actions, though, are showing, hey, this is what I think Clemson, Florida State, UNC. This is how I think a meeting went with them. You ready? Hey, look, this case in the House with the NCAA is about to go through, and we're going to have to do a TV revenue share. Well, why would kids go to Florida State if we got to do TV revenue share, okay, why would they come here and not go to somewhere in the SEC when they're going to make more money? And if you think that kids are making a lot of money now, oh, buddy. Joe, did you see the model of 85 scholarship players with a kid in the SEC might make? $244,000 a year. I mean,
we never talked about the walk-on thing, which is, I mean, that's a whole nother. There's so much that's been happening over the past couple of weeks. But you're right, though. I think that's the whole point here is that these top programs in the ACC are looking at it not so much as we can't afford it, as we don't want to lose a step. We still want to be able to compete and be at the highest level. And right now, it does not feel like the ACC is setting us up for that. And as much as we could argue Florida State missing the playoff was indirect or directly related to all this, it's at least an indicator of you are not preparing us for the future of college football. We are operating like this is 2010, and this athletic conference is not geared up for 2030 and beyond, where athletes are going to be making a lot of money, and we need to be able to have the money and the funds to pay the right kids that are going to improve our branding, that we're going to win national titles, we're going to go to the playoffs, we're going to have kids in commercials, and we're going to be face forward everywhere. I mean, Caitlin Clark's a great example where nobody talks about Iowa. People made fun of Iowa until she did what she did, and she's in State Farm commercials. It's
Paul's right there. Paul's right there.
Yeah.
3 months ago, I led off an LSU-centric show with Caitlin Clark because there were articles that did not go viral in reference to Fox legitimately trying to give her TV revenue money, okay, to keep her at Iowa because of how much money that they were making. I talked about it for like 30 minutes. Joe, people were leaving. They didn't care. And now they're coming back and saying, like, I had a comment from an episode that I clipped 3 months ago. I had 5 comments on YouTube yesterday about this. Sorry that we didn't agree with you. Like, and I was like, damn, this is the first time in my career that somebody's gone back to a video and said, sorry, we didn't agree with you. I know what I just said was very, people are going to say it's conspiracy theorist-esque. It's not conspiracy theorist-esque. It's what we have talked about throughout this entire process. So to wrap this up in reference to UNC, Clemson, Florida State, I'm going to throw this your way to them again, though, Joe. Are you still 1,000% positive that you're going to make the same amount of money if you go somewhere else? Because let me just tell you this. Let's just say the Big Ten, the SEC add these teams. Either one or two things will happen. Okay, the schools won't vote you in because they're not going to get the same amount of money that they have, or you're going to have to go a couple of years while, by the way, paying, okay, multi-year $550 million worth. Like, for example, SMU comes in the ACC. They don't get TV revenue share. There's no precedence now that you're doing TV revenue. Joe, I do think, you know what's ironic about this? I do think that this could help settle realignment. Let me tell you why. Why, if I am because I heard today that, yesterday, that SEC presidents of those universities met. You know what that conversation revolved around? Realignment.
UNC. Okay.
Well, correct. And you know what? No president or AD is going to want to bring in other schools if that means that their money goes down. ESPN has already come out and said, hey, listen, we're not giving you more money. So if you bring other schools in, you're going to have to figure that out yourselves. We're not giving you any more money. So if I'm a president of Alabama, Texas, A&M, name Georgia, name the school, why would I bring you in? Because now I have to share that TV revenue money with players. Now my budget goes down. Why would I even remotely bring them in?
Well, I think ultimately that North Carolina is the most unique in all this, and why I think that this is the much bigger catalyst than Florida State.
Okay, cut North Carolina.
But I think that they're unique, though, is because they're going to enter these
basketball and all that.
But they entered with leverage in these negotiations that they're not going to have to deal with this.
Correct. That's a very good point. That's bad on my part. Let's cut that for a moment. Florida State.
So you bring up a part of this that I don't think that the exit route for Florida State and Clemson is as readily open as
Bingo.
I think that they hope that it would be. Look, at the end
Bingo.
of the day, and I was on TJ Pittenger's show yesterday, and we talked about this. He hasn't
Shout
published
out
it
to
yet.
TJ.
Shout out to TJ. Appreciate him having me on. He's a fan of the show. His work is awesome as well. I just talked about and said, and we kind of talked about with this, is that I completely just lost my train of thought because I got this.
Y'all were talking about the realignment of Florida State.
Jesus Christ, what the hell?
I mean, I can't lead you in any better than that.
I don't remember what I was just about to say. But
Florida Texas A&M fans stole your thoughts.
Yeah, honestly, they did. North Carolina, God damn it, I hate doing more.
Basically, all right.
Go ahead.
Basically, here's my thought on this.
Mm-hmm.
Do I think that they can leave? Do I think that they can come up with a?
Wait. Okay, I remember what I was going to say. I don't think that this happens as quickly as everybody thinks that it will. I think that because of
that's where I was going.
The length of the contract,
and that revolves around my first point with UNC.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you make that comment about, hey, well, just give us more money if it's that relatively easy to leave them? The ACC, to their credit, and nobody wants to listen to this, I think that they have more leverage than people think that they do.
They do. People saw what happened with the Pac-12 and immediately assume that the same is going to happen, but they're discounting how hard it is to get out of a big contract like that. Put your hand down.
You know who's being ultra quiet in all this?
Miami?
Them too. But I think Miami, no. Don't be surprised if the SEC did make a push. Greg Sankey's push, I promise you, is going to be UNC and Duke related.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.